All right. You can hear me okay, Andy? Okay. So, sorry for starting a couple minutes late. This is our very first time ever doing a live stream, so please bear with us if we're not as professional as Linus. Welcome to our Intel Gamer Days Build a Gaming PC live stream. Every year, Intel celebrates the world of PC gaming by working with all the various retailers and resellers that sell PC hardware and systems to kind of blow things out and create attractive deals and events and promos for all of you out there. And for us this year, along with all the normal sort of sales promotions and combo deals that we're offering, we're also doing this live stream during which we're going to basically build up a super high-end gaming PC that's built off of a Core i9 11900K, a 3080 Ti, and then a whole bunch of RGB bells and whistles and all kinds of other stuff. If you're curious, and I hope you are, about the rest of our deals for Intel Gamer Days, you can take a look at our website at centralcomputer.com. There's a couple banners up at the top of the website as well as in the carousel that'll lead you to the IGD promo page where you'll see deals on 11th gen Core i9 11900Ks, i7 11700Ks, i5 11600Ks, power supplies from EVGA, Asus motherboards, Asus gaming monitors, all kinds of stuff. Dozens of different items are on sale right now. So I should probably introduce myself. My name's Chester. I'm part of the family that started the company. So I still work for my mom and dad. My brother Craig is not here, but you can usually find him in the Santa Clara store as well. And I've got here Derek, who's one of our technicians, who's going to be leading the build and working through things. He is based out of the Santa Clara store, so if you ever get a custom system built here, there's a really good chance that is going to be Derek's handiwork. You would trust his work much more than mine. So in terms of the Santa Clara store is our headquarters. But we've got 5 stores around the Bay Area. We've got one here in Santa Clara, Sunnyvale on the north side, Newark in the East Bay, San Mateo on the peninsula, and then of course our store on Howard Street in San Francisco. So the last time that we did one walkthrough about a week and a half ago, and we ran ultra long, but we've streamlined the whole process by pre-arranging certain things, and we're going to try to keep on a deadline to keep you guys out, or keep you guys engaged and get you guys out without too much investment in this. All right, so I think we're just going to launch into the specs of all the parts and components that we're going to use for this build. And for that, I'm going to ask Derek to go ahead and introduce all the individual parts.
Of course. Thank you, Chester. That was a beautiful introduction. And now I can stop hiding behind the wonderfully large Meshify 2. So just like Chester had kind of introduced before, we are using some fairly high-end components today, starting with the Intel i9 11900K. Pairing that in terms of the motherboard, we're going with a Maximus 13 Hero that is heavier than a newborn child, which is quite impressive, but great for overclocking. To keep it cool, we are going with the NZXT Z73 360 millimeter AIO cooler. It's one of those things that, for aesthetic reasons, as well as cooling, it's one of those components that you can't really go wrong with. For our gaming, obviously, or video rendering, depending on who you are, we're going with the 3080 Ti from EVGA, one of the newer graphic cards that just came out. For our storage drive, with Intel's Z590 chipset, you are allowed to use a Gen 4 M.2 drive. So we're going with the SN850 without the heatsink, since the motherboard provides us with a lot of passive cooling already on the board. For memory today, we're going with 32 gigs of Corsair's Vengeance Pro SL, which is their slimline or low profile, however you want to kind of put it. The rest of the RGB we're going with is the QL fans, since we are going with a fully out-kitted system. We want to make sure everything stays nice and cool. And RGB is not cool when you can only see the backside of it. So we're going with the dual-sided fan. Last but not least, we've got the Corsair RM850X to give it plenty of power with some of our custom black sleeve cables. And then our beautiful and mesh case, the Meshify 2, is going to house all of our components in there. I do know we were going to introduce some of our giveaways for later now that we have an empty slate. So the last part I'm going to take off, we're going to put this down here.
All right.
And then we're going to show off some of the cool things you guys can win today.
And I'll haul in the shopping list here. Oh, jeez.
All good?
All right, so we figure that there's going to be a good number of you guys who already know how to build a system, don't need any help with that, don't need any tips, don't need any tricks, don't need to ask any questions, and you're here for free stuff. And we're here to give you free stuff, at least during this, not normally, because we're a retail store. So first, we're going to be giving, in order, giving away a SanDisk, dual drive, live USB Type-C, or Lux USB Type-C memory stick, and then we'll move along to Western Digital's Blue Line SN550 NVMe M.2 SSD drive. This is a 1 terabyte capacity drive. If you don't know, then basically the Western Digital Blues are a really nice value play. If you want to be able to take advantage of NVMe M.2 speeds, but you don't want to spend quite as much as some of the higher end drives. Depending on what you're doing, I don't think that you're really going to notice much difference or any difference at all. But if you want to spend big and you want to go for the absolute top in performance, then we've got also a giveaway for a Western Digital Black SN850 NVMe M.2 drive, also a 1 terabyte. These, as Derek had mentioned, are PCIe 4.0 compatible drives. And this one in particular is actually even nicer than the one that we're building into this system in that it holds or has its own beefy heatsink, and the heatsink even has a little RGB light built into it.
Because it makes it faster. It
makes it, yeah, even faster and more secure and reliable. And then we've got a duo of NZXT Kraken Z series AIO CPU coolers. We're going to give away 2 of them, and for each of the giveaways, whomever does win the Kraken Z can choose to take either a Kraken Z63 or a Kraken Z73. And of course, the difference between this is 240 millimeter size versus 360 millimeter size. And we just figured that if you've got an existing system, you got to fit it in the case that you've got. Or if you're planning out a build, you maybe have a case in mind. And so we don't want to stick you with a 240 millimeter cooler if you really want to put in a 360 and your case will accommodate it. So all of these we're going to be giving away during the course of these of the live stream. And the way that you're going to enter the drawings is to go. Now you guys have to look at me. I'm talking to our marketing team off camera. Look at me off camera and make sure that as I describe these rules that this is accurate and correct. And if it is not, then wave a hand frantically and let me know. I think go to our Facebook page, right? Facebook.com/centralcomputer. If you go to the top pinned post, which is promoting this very live stream, but specifically the one with a big red live now in the middle of the graphic, that is the one that you need to, is this the conditions that you typed out? Okay. Comment, I guess this is a little intricate. Comment with your favorite game and tag a friend. And
so
then
that they can win.
Yeah, and then it would be, yeah, if they find out about the raffle, then they can enter and degrade your chances of winning anything cool. It would be cool if you liked our Facebook page. I bargained with our team and we don't actually require it, nor can we check it. But in order to enter the drawings, all you have to do is go to that pinned Facebook post, the one with the glaring live now on it, post a comment with the name of your favorite game and tag a friend. And then from then on, Our team is going to be monitoring that. Late arrivals that do it later on are going to be included in later drawings if they enter in time. But in general, we're going to be taking all the names and we're going to be entering into a random draw software and pull one out periodically throughout the stream. And that's basically it. So I'm going to clear off the goodies. Oh no, I have to. I never introduced this. So this is the grand prize.
Oh yeah, the elephant in the room
It's kind
at
of the
the
point.
end.
It's kind of the point. So there's the USB stick, the Western Digital Blue, the Western Digital Black, the Kraken Z63, the Kraken C73, and I'm getting a flag from my team. You can just say it out loud. 5 minutes, what?
Oh, the first drawing's in 5 minutes?
Oh,
Yeah.
that is a key rule. We're gonna be biased for the people that stick with the process of watching me and Derek have witty repartee for this entire time. So
I promise I'll be entertaining.
you're only qualified if you enter and you make the comment and you tag a friend. And when we do the drawing, we're going to message you and you need to be able to reply to that message within 5 minutes, which is to say that you're paying attention at least to your messages, if not the screen. So that's important. And then finally, the grand prize that we have for today is an EVGA GeForce RTX 3060 GPU, which is maybe not worth its weight in gold anymore, but is still a pretty difficult thing to get easily or cheaply. So with that, I think I'm going to kick it back over to Derek and we're going to start the build.
Wonderful.
And I think the one thing that we wanted to go through, Derek, was given that you build dozens of systems every week, you end up working out certain processes that are going to save you time, allow you to be efficient, but still make sure that you're thorough and diligent, and you end up developing a routine. And so what is the sequence that you usually go through in terms of building a system?
Of course. So my normal process is to try and get the majority of our core components assembled outside of the case for a post test. In that post test, it makes sure that a lot of your components that are connected are being recognized properly and such. Without that, you could build your system and find out that you nicked one of your RAM sticks and it's not going to post. So going through all of that to start is a really good way to make sure that you're going through and connecting everything properly. So I've already unboxed everything, so you don't have to watch me open boxes and all that good stuff. I've already connected my cables, things like that. So you'll see things that are a little abnormal, but I'll walk through them as we're going through that. So anytime you are building a PC outside of a case where you are not potentially grounding any of your stuff, having non-conductive surfaces like an anti-static mat, a cardboard box, your motherboard box is what a lot of people will do, and ensure that you're not going to zap into your components. So the first thing we've got is we have our motherboard. One of the couple of the really nice features about this is, like I mentioned earlier, the weight of this motherboard is mainly from the heat sinks that are on the board for M.2 cooling, your VRM cooling, and just allowing you to overclock your CPU as far as it can go without really any limitations. So without further ado, I've got the first couple of components. If we want to ready up that camera, we can go and get going with the CPU install and some other things. Are we on the overhead right now, or are we still on my? Okay.
Do you want to switch to the overhead?
Okay. So with any Intel motherboards or anything like that, you will have a socket cover right here where it says "Join the Republic." With this, it protects the pins that are attached to the motherboard that contact our CPU. So keeping this until the last moment is very crucial. You actually don't need to remove it either. It actually pops off once you install it into the socket.
And the
So
one thing is what Derek is doing right now in terms of assembling these core components for the post test is something that we routinely do or that we offer as a service, a free service for all of our customers who are buying those components from us. So basically, if you buy a motherboard, CPU, and memory from us, then we will do this core assembly for you, power it up, and do a post test. And the idea of this is one, to be cool and nice. And two, it's to make sure that number one, you walk away from the store with these three critical components uh, confirmed to be working properly. So you don't go home and find out that you've got a dead motherboard, which is going to be the more common out of these three components. CPU and memory is almost never bad and almost never goes bad. Motherboards all the time. So that's important for us. The other thing too is that the one thing that the one thing that is actually super critical that you get right or do not get wrong in a system assembly that you cannot walk back from, you can't just swap a cable or connect a cable that you forgot to replace, is putting in the CPU the wrong way.
So yeah, like I explained, we didn't really need to remove the cover. As soon as we latched down the retention plate, this just pops off. So there's no need to remove it. Keeping that for safekeeping if you were ever to upgrade your CPU down the line, or to give it to a friend, keeping that does protect it when it is in shipping. For the keen eye, some people already see my AIO brackets still installed from when I did all of that. The next thing that we're going to do is going to do the memory modules. Like I said, we're doing the Corsair Vengeance. With DDR4 or any memory modules, they are keyed. And this one has a very easy to see key that you can only put in the proper way because it is offset. So if I was to install this the other way, that key would not line up. So going through and installing all of the RAM on both sides, you'll hear one click, two clicks. The clicks make sure that you are fully seated and that they will be recognized later. When we do the post test, if we were to say only install one of them properly and the other one wasn't fully seated, but it wasn't contacting and messing up the post, you would notice that one of the sticks wouldn't show up. Since we are populating all 4 DIMM slots, not a huge deal in terms of orientation, but if you were doing just a single kit of memory, most motherboards will suggest you to put them in the second and fourth away from the CPU, but always refer to your motherboard just in case. One other thing I really like to do when I am doing these post tests, just because it's the easiest at this time, is to install the M.2. We have our SN850. Since it is a Gen 4 drive for all Z590 motherboards, it is required to put your Gen 4 drive into the top slot M.2.
Derek already mentioned Hero. I almost want to say Extreme. Maximus 13 Hero is one of the higher end boards in the ROG line, so it's just chock full of all these heat sinks, and you're not going to use a kind of following in the footsteps of the Dark Hero X570 for the AMD platform is that it is without an active fan. Cooled, one less moving part on the motherboard to potentially go bad, and maybe just a bit.
All right, so kind of just finishing up here, installing the M.2 does require a retention screw. I left it in there from previous just so I didn't have to fumble around with it. And aligning these screws are always the worst. Having a magnetic screwdriver or an iFixit kit definitely does make a huge difference. But you really only need 2 tools. You need a 0 and a number 1 screwdriver to essentially complete a PC nowadays, which is really cool.
So there's somebody that asked in the chat
Mhm.
whether or not we're using an ESD electrostatic mat, which we are. And the other thing
Cardboard.
too, yeah. And then there's also the boards on the cardboard. The table itself is not going to generate static electricity.
Hmm.
And you know, one of the things that you end up doing when you're a computer tech is you're periodically touching metal stuff
Yeah.
all the time to discharge yourself. I mean, to be frank with you, I don't want to counsel people to not be careful, right? Especially if you're buying stuff from us. But I would say that the perceived danger of static shock and damaging components, I think, in general, is kind of overstated. Which is not to say that you shouldn't be careful. You need to be careful. You need to be conscientious of it. You just don't need to be like ultra paranoid and like strap yourself down with a million different things in order to do stuff. I mean, again, each of our techs builds dozens of systems every week, and got to be careful, but you just don't got to be a freak about it.
Yeah, so if you have an electric static wristband or a mat, those make it very passively to be safe. If those things aren't available to you, or they're just not available at the time, plugging in your power supply and just having it off does act as a ground because of it being plugged in and all that stuff. So that does allow you to have um, a touching source. If you saw before, I was kind of just randomly touching and doing that. It's just a habit at this point. So we have the 24 pin fully seated, making sure that that clip goes all the way down so that we're not having any misconnection here. This motherboard does have two 8-pin EPS connectors at the top. So we have both of those plugged in right there. Since we do have an integrated GPU on this, since it's not a KF model, we don't need to unbox the GPU or anything at this time. So the last thing we gotta do is we gotta put a heatsink on it, connect the monitor, and then we'll do the test.
All right.
Mhm.
Off camera, Derek, so you don't have to worry about this, is we're going to be prepared to do the first drawing pretty soon for that USB stick, which, you know, everybody has a USB stick, but this is a pretty nice one. And go ahead and please enter if you haven't already. If you didn't tune in, or if you're tuning in relatively late and missed the instructions, in order to enter any and all of the drawings that we're going to be doing today, all you need to do is go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/centralcomputer. Go to the pinned post, which has a big live now red text in the middle of the graphic, and type a comment where you're naming your favorite game and you're tagging a friend. And then our team will be harvesting all the names and entering them into the drawing. So Derek, what's your next step here? You've got everything plugged in to power.
Yep, so I
To
have
host.
the power supply on. I have a heatsink resting on the CPU. We're not going to keep it on super long, just having some sort of heatsink on it. With a fan connected, a passive heatsink is not going to be enough for this to run for more than a few seconds. But since we're installing an AIO and it's a little cumbersome to do it when the case isn't involved yet, doing this is a good intermediate step. So I have a keyboard because the BIOS will yell at me. Let's go and flick on the power supply. We should see some beautiful RGB on the board. And then at this point, makes it real easy because we do have a surface mounted power switch. But if you did not have everything else connected, using the front panel and just bridging the power is an alternative. So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so one of the features that you have, did you just say that it has a power button on it?
But if it didn't, you could just bridge your power switch.
And what Derek means by that is that you basically take a paper clip or you take something else that will touch two of the jumpers at the same time, tripping the switch.
So
okay, here we go.
there we are.
So this is a little low tech, and sorry for the glare, but Derek, walk us through the very key things that you're looking for during a post test to make sure that everything's coming up correctly.
Of course. So we're making sure that our motherboard is being recognized properly. We see that we're a Maximus 13 Hero. We're seeing the proper processor in 11900K. The speed is not relevant. That's just the base clock. We're making sure that all of our RAM is being recognized. We have 32 gigs, so 4 by 8 sticks. It shows that we have our one drive initialized, and then anytime you install a CPU, it'll ask you to go through setup. So using the keyboard that we have, it'll take us to BIOS, and then you can have a better look at what's kind of going on.
And then with memory settings, are you gonna fiddle with that at this point now, or wait until later in the install?
So I normally will check XMP since we have checked this before. It's still actually enabled. So if this is what it would look like before we touch that, otherwise it will run at its base clock of 2666.
Right. So basically, XMP is dynamic memory management that will automatically clock your memory up from the base default speed as essentially the system sees fit. Otherwise, you're going to be running at a slower clock speed. And what speed memory are we putting in here?
This is a 3600 speed kit at cast latency 18,
Right.
which is pretty fast. It can be a little bit quicker, but going 32 gigs for this is more than enough,
Okay.
especially for gaming. So at this point, now that I have seen that everything is good to go, it's perfectly safe to turn off the power supply from here and just start to break down stuff.
Right.
I like to take off the heatsink since it's the only thing that's not really attached, just so that there's less moving parts that can cause any damage. And then going through making sure that all of the power supply cables are disconnected. I believe I have a question. What is the difference between the RM and the RMX power supplies from Corsair? From what I remember, I believe the big difference is the cabling.
I think it was like better quality cabling was
Yeah.
one of the things.
So if I can switch over to the overhead real fast, Andy, as you can see, like these cables are not, the ketchup and mustard that you would normally see on like power supplies from a few years ago. They are fairly nice looking, and if you didn't want to replace these, this is going to look perfectly fine. Granted, we are going to be going with our cable extensions that are a nice nylon braided paracord, I believe is what these are made out of, with the cable combs and everything. So it does make a difference, but for what I remember, the big difference between the two is mostly the cabling.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the thing that, frankly speaking, we don't know off the top of our head. We should know. If you met us in store, then we'd look it up. Right now, I think that also generally some of the electrical guts are basically higher quality. Like you may have better voltage regulation, an extra capacitor or better capacitors. So that's just one of those things that we'd have to look up. So sorry about that.
But I tried my best.
Yeah.
So at this point, we've tested our core components. Essentially, we're going to start moving into the remainder of the case and kind of show that off to you. I think we're getting close to our first giveaway, if I remember right, which was the USB.
Eric's going to be setting up. To go back to memory.
Sure.
No, I'm trying to give you some free time to work.
Oh, okay.
Without having to talk at the same time.
I could talk all day, you know that.
That is true. To go back to memory, we're putting in 3600 megahertz memory, and you're only going to really hit that, I would say, probably in relatively brief moments, according with XMP. It really depends on what you're doing. But the thing that often ends up being the case with computer stuff is that you're not necessarily making decisions based upon even specs or even dollar efficiency. It's just simply that right now on the market, if you compare the cost of 3200 megahertz memory versus 3600 megahertz memory, the 3600 kit is only going to cost like maybe $5 more, $7 more, $8 more. So you just basically make that jump, because even though the amount of time that your memory may take advantage of that extra clocks or that extra ceiling on the clock speed, it costs such a little amount of money that you might as well do that. But conversely, you don't go up to 4,000 megahertz memory simply because the differential there is way higher.
That's when you want to play with overclocks
There you go.
and shoot for some scores. So as Chester was talking, I have the Meshify back on the table and kind of disassembling the case. One of the really nice features for most of the Fractal cases is the ability to kind of take them apart and really have some good visibility on it, and not really have to fiddle with, you know, a lot of tight spaces. So taking off the top panel, the two side panels, which are toolless, which makes it really nice to snap in and out, makes you be a little better at your cable management too. Your front panel comes off, so you have access to the front fans. You can see two of our Corsair fans already in there since, like we said, we didn't want to bore you. But this is going to be our bare bones of kind of like what we're going to work with. My first thing that I normally will do is install the motherboard into the case, and then build around that, since your motherboard is pretty much the backbone of everything. Looks like we're finalizing some stuff over there so that we can pick our first winner, I assume.
Winner,
Ooh,
whose name is very long and very difficult to pronounce, but I'm going to give it my best shot.
that's all you can do.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna try to put the name on the stream somehow, and that was what the delay was. But our winner, our first winner of the SanDisk Ultra Dual Drive Lux USB Type C 120 gigabyte thumb drive is, oh my gosh, Koei Hayanapwa Young.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. All right. Go ahead, Derek.
All right. Congratulations to the winner. So at this point, I'm going to lay it down just for ease and maybe a little bit easier to see on camera. How does that look, Andy? Can you see inside the case really well? Yeah, sweet. One of the other really nice features with these higher end motherboards is going to be the integrated I/O shield. I'm not going to have to pop it into the case. It's already built onto the motherboard. So the installation for this is going to be fairly straightforward. We're just lining up our posts
And also,
into the case.
as opposed to the old days and maybe the current days with some really crappy cases, all the risers are already pre-installed in the case.
Yeah, so that's all it took there. We're just a little bit off on the top. I ran into that in the beginning when I first put this in, but you know, just takes a little finagling. Looks really nice. Getting it lined up before you put the screws in makes it so you're not going to strip them. I have my parts tray here with all of my screws. All of your motherboard screws are going to come with your case, so they're matched to the risers that are already installed in the case. I'm going to try and not spin this too much on you guys so that you don't get dizzy. But there are some that are just a little bit harder to see.
So just to go back to, I guess, one of the main impetuses for this entire event, which is Intel Gaming Days.
Yep.
While Derek works quietly on the assembly, just going to go over the CPU that we're putting in here again is an Intel Core i9 11900K. This is the flagship model of Intel's 11th generation Rocket Lake processors. So the interesting thing about this, which a lot of you will know if you keep up to speed on all of this, is that you actually had a step down in core and thread count, going from 1020 core and threads down to 8 core, 16 threads. And it has a 3.5 gigahertz base clock frequency and max turbo boost up to 5.3 gigahertz. So the interesting, I mean, usually you don't see going from one gen to a newer gen a decrease in the core count. And I guess what I would just simply say as a summary of what the approach is that Intel's gearing these processors towards providing the best single core performance or low core performance that they possibly can, and pushing these processors back up towards being at the top of the heap as far as, or amongst the top of the heap as far as single thread performance, which is to say the type of performance most critical for gaming. And the fact remains that for a lot of people, or for most people, they're not using applications or software that are really going to take full advantage of a really deep core count beyond, let's say, 4 cores or 6 cores. So the approach, it makes sense, and it makes sense especially for a gaming build like this. Did you want to move on to another description, or do you just like to listen to me talk?
I love listening to you talk, Chester.
That's not true. The other thing is within the Rocket Lake 11th gen, you've also got lower end processors that are actually like really, really nice value plays. And we encourage anyone who's building up a gaming system to take a good hard look at the 11600K and the 11700K, both of which, like I would say, for gaming performance, 11600K, I think, generally speaking, would surpass an AMD Ryzen 5600X, and 11700K is going to compare pretty favorably against a 5800X. And you can also look backwards at the 10th gen processors if you can still find them on shelves. Sometimes they're good values, they're marked down. And another thing that to always keep in mind is that you can mix both the 10th and 11th gen motherboards and CPUs, in the sense that you can put a 10th gen CPU on an 11th gen motherboard and vice versa. So if, for example, you have a older system, a 10th gen system, and you, let's say, have a Core i5, but you want to upgrade to an 11900K to get basically the fastest performance you can get on the Intel platform right now, you don't necessarily need to upgrade your motherboard, which is a nice thing. But
just a BIOS update.
That is true. But if you do upgrade the motherboard, then, I mean, there are certainly advantages to that. If you go up to a Z590 versus a Z490, then you're going to be getting a higher memory clock frequency. You get PCIe 4.0 compatibility. You get full lane availability to 2 M.2 SSDs. And even though this sometimes seems like kind of a small thing, you get USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 native support. So for anybody who is using, actually, I don't think that's a 2x2.
The Type-C?
That's probably a USB 3.2 Gen 2, but not a 2x2. So the fact that the motherboards have it as native support and have the ports built in on the back on their I/O cluster, it's a big thing for anybody that is needing to use like high throughput data applications, which is to say like an external hard drive. So if you back up all your photos or videos or anything else onto an external hard drive, having that extra speed makes a huge deal, because I think it goes from USB 3.2 Gen 2 is, I think, 20 megabits per second, and you go up to 40 with Gen 2 times 2. So, I mean, it's a big deal. In any case, Derek?
So what I have on the table now is our AIO with our QL fans already installed. So just to kind of get us into what we're doing next, with everything being able to come off, we have access to the top panel here fairly easily, so that we can install the AIO without banging into things too much. These 360 coolers are large, and they can be a little cumbersome to install in smaller cases, but with all of our visibility in the Mesh 2, it's going to be fairly...
Before you place the AIO, I just want to show the audience one thing. If you'll hand me the Noctua cooler.
Oh, of course.
So I'm going to awkwardly try to jump in here and show you how unattractive this looks when you stick it into a high-end system. So try to emblazon this ugly sight in your mind.
But great performing.
And this is not even a high-end Noctua fan. But the other ones get much bigger, and the only better looking they get is that they come in a total black color, which doesn't look bad, but you'll see the difference once Derek gets the whole AIO installed, as well as the really unique feature set of the Kraken Z series.
I'm actually going to move up to the front of the table, and then we're going to look over my shoulder so that you can see me install this as best we can. So I've already oriented and tested all of my AIO. We're going for a top mount, so we're going to be mounting it on the top of the case up here. The biggest thing with a lot of these radiators are made of aluminum and they are very soft, so you really don't want to leave it unsupported for too long, besides just a few screws. So I do like to make sure that we have all those screws with washers so that they don't pull through, available to start off.
Derek, did you talk about the fan switch already?
We talked about the QLs as a whole.
Okay, so
but we can definitely go into it.
no, while you concentrate on not dropping the radiator while you install it, if you noticed, some of you guys might have noticed, it's hard from this view because you're basically looking at. Oh, I think that we need to fix the camera view because I think. What? Oh yeah, okay. I'm looking at the wrong camera feed, Derek. Anyways, so if you can notice the sort of translucent sides on the fans attached to the radiators, these are not the stock fans that come with the NZXT AIOs. What we've done is already swapped in Corsair QL 120s, double-sided RGB fans to basically match the QL 140s that we swapped in to replace the stock non-RGB fans that came with this Fractal Meshify 2 case. Long story short, basically to make it look cooler. And I think that it would be nice if the NZXT AIOs already came with the RGB. You can get them with the X series without the whiz-bang OLED screen, but at present time you can't get NZXT RGB fans with the Kraken Z series. So for now, what we're doing is we're replacing them with Corsairs. The other advantage of this, actually, regardless of what RGB fans do come with the AIO or any other particular component or case that you're getting, is whenever you're doing RGB in a system, one thing that you really should try to plan out and think about ahead of time is the totality of what you're going to do for RGB. And the main thing is that you want to match up the manufacturer for all your different RGB components as much as you possibly can, and not to use too many different too many parts from different manufacturers.
So right now I've got the radiator kind of mounted up with a good amount of screws to support it since it is heavy. I'm routing all of the RGB leads and the fan leads as well through the motherboard tray into the back so that we can be able to plug those into the RGB hub and everything going forward. When you are routing them through the top, just be wary of all of the fan and RGB posts. Those pins are very fragile, so as you go, just make sure you're not snagged on anything, as to not damage anything, because, you know. So already, as you can see, we're already looking very clean. Once I have the last fan in the rear, we'll go ahead and center the AIO. So the next part.
And in the interest of time, we also already swapped out the two 140 millimeter fans up in front. Like I'd mentioned before, they came with really nice Fractal fans, but they're not RGB. So we swapped in Corsair QL 140s there. And then if you see the back of the case, there is space for another either 120 or 140 millimeter fan. And like Derek said, he's going to be shortly putting in a final 6th Corsair fan, and it'll be a QL 140. Later on, Derek's going to kind of show you how you may want to also pay attention to the order or the placement of the RGB connector leads coming off of your fans, whether they're Corsair's format or they're ARGB. Sometimes the sequence or where you're placing the connections can make a difference as far as making it more logical for you to control the RGB settings.
Or to route your cables.
Or to route your cables, that's true. Can you, Derek, describe, well, the AIO pump head could conceivably go in any one of like 4 different orientations, right?
Yep.
How do you settle on this one where you have the hoses here on the bottom of the AIO pump head, and then also why is it that you've got the pump, the hoses coming up to the front of the case rather than flipping it around so that they're at the back of the case?
Sure. So with any case, everything's going to be a little bit different. So speaking about this case in particular, we chose the hoses down to allow us to have our connectors for the NZXT hub and everything to be on the right hand side. So having that over here allows us to just route it straight up and be able to tuck it out of the way as best we can. We could have theoretically gone with the hoses on top. That would put our cables over here. But the first time I installed it, I didn't like the look of it. We have a little bit more to hide here with the heat of the height of the heat sinks from the memory modules. So because of that, that's the way I went with this. This motherboard, because of the large heat sinks on this side, going to the left or to the right, we would impact either of those two. So we really only had 2 options with this one. With boards with smaller heat sinks, you do have the option to go here. And sometimes here, on different AIOs, the NZXT ones are fairly large.
Right.
So it does kind of limit us there. And routing them this way makes it so it's nice and swooping. We're not all bunched up. We don't want to restrict any flow and make the pump work any harder than it has to
Right.
keep the 11900K cool.
The other thing is that in this orientation, it's taken care of naturally. You don't have a choice but to have the connection at the radiator end higher than the connection at the pump head. But basically what you want to do is you want to have the pump head at a lower, I don't want to say elevation, but a lower height than the connection at the radiator when the pump or when the cooling block has the pump head in it. I forget which brand it is, but I think that there's one AIO where the pump is actually in the radiator.
So there are the new fractal ones actually have it in the radiator. The Be Quiet has them inline in the tube. So this is just a jet plate and not a pump. So it's actually out here. So the orientation is a lot more flexible. But with AIOs in general, because they are a closed loop and you can't really change anything about them, having them at the lower elevation allows it to move water, because pumps like these cannot move air, because air does not compress, causes cavitation, and can cause them to wear out sooner than you'd like them to. All of these want to keep them as long as possible.
And then if we have, actually I never thought, like, you can go ahead and go on with the assembly.
Perfect.
Do you need to get around me?
I'm just gonna go right here and grab my...
Just go right through. We're all friends here.
Oh yeah.
If we have any AIO newbies and who don't really know what this is, and this looks like some kind of weird HR Geiger aliens gear, it's an all-in-one liquid cooling CPU cooler, obviously, as opposed to the air cooler, which we showed, which is the, sort of the traditional way going back to the days of beige towers. And obviously the difference is that with an air cooler, as you can see here, you've got a heat sink, and this is all passive, and basically all the heat will permeate through the heat sink, and the fan that is here on the side is going to basically dispel the heat. And then hopefully, if you have proper fans set up in your case, it'll be exhausted by an exhaust fan. Whereas with an AIO, what you have here on top of the CPU, generally speaking, is going to be a cooling block and a water pump or a liquid pump, and basically all the heat is drawn up and then channeled into the cooling liquid that goes through one of the hoses to the radiator, and then the radiator, much like the heatsink of the air cooler, is going to be cooled and exhausted with the fans that are attached to the radiator. And then the cool liquid will filter back through the second hose back to the pump head end to begin the process anew, or continuously, actually. Um, a lot of people wonder what is the point of going with AIO, and I would say that in general, you can have higher ceilings potentially in terms of cooling and overclocking. If you get a high quality AIO with a larger radiator, generally speaking, you're going to be able to overclock higher. Although the big beefy air coolers like the Noctua DH, or is it, what is,
D15.
yeah, the NH D15, or maybe like a Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro. Those are going to be fantastic performers also. So that's a give and take depending on the model. And at the end of the day, frankly speaking, a lot of people are going to end up going AIO because of aesthetics. Because number one, if you do get a really high performance air cooler, it's not going to be this compact. It's going to be larger. You're going to have double-sided fans, or you're going to have fans on both sides and maybe one in the middle. And one of the things that's going to happen is that it's going to cover up your really cool-looking RGB RAM, if not conflict with the height entirely. The other thing too is that it's just going to be this giant object sitting in the middle of your case, detracting attention and blocking the view of motherboard RGB, your memory RGB, and maybe conflicting with, well, probably not conflicting with fans, but also maybe being too big for some of the smaller form factor cases that you can get. Whereas with an AIO, if you get an AIO that's like, you can get AIOs down to 120 millimeter, and you can fit them into very small mini ITX systems that might not be able to take anything except for a lower profile air fan, which won't perform necessarily as well. Where are you at as far as your cabling?
So every time I do cable extensions, I forget to plug them in before I do an AIO install. And this area in particular is quite tight. Even with it out of the way, it's still a little cumbersome. So I did detach the fan real fast to allow me from really fiddling too long with it. And then I can go ahead and kind of get the combs kind of back in place so they look nice.
So I wasn't really paying attention to you, but you talked about the fact that you're doing extensions, right?
Yeah, so when we were talking about the power supply earlier, I was showing off our extensions.
So I can, here, I'll show them. Here you've got the nice individually braided sleeve extension cables, and then here you've got what is the sort of default look that you get with even a relatively nice, I mean, a relatively nice cable set from the power supply. So essentially all it is that this just looks cooler, and it does.
And then I am getting some
Oh, that's right.
notification about our next winner.
Okay, so that's the full name. All right.
Do people have really awesome names today?
This one is pretty awesome. Elisa, could you pass me our prize? So for our second giveaway, which is for a Western Digital Blue SN550 1 terabyte NVMe M.2 solid state drive, one of the champions of value SSDs, is none other than Hobho. H-O-B-H-O.
That is an awesome name.
Congratulations, Hobho, on your name and on the drive.
All right, so I'm just putting the AO back in there. This is a fairly common mistake or oversight, I would say. Not a mistake. I didn't mess anything up. Just an oversight, and installing these large AIOs is, there is a little bit of a order of operations to some of these things. So now getting everything back and tidied up, pull those cables that got a little loose.
So one of the things that can be one of the detraction or one of the negatives of these really, really nice high-end boards like these ROGs is all this heat sinking makes it super difficult because it's super tight to get in these crevices to slide cables through.
And we're getting caught because all that surface area. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and throw that rear fan in, and then we'll start doing cables for the case and the power supply, and then we're halfway done.
Oh, you have it right there. Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. I'm just being cued off camera to play Vanna White, and let's swing over here just to continue talking about the cable extensions. This is purely aesthetic. It's not going to provide more power. It's not going to provide cleaner power. It's not going to provide more reliable power. It's going to provide blingier power. So we have black, individually sleeved, nylon braided cable extensions going into the system that we're building right now, but we also offer other colors. So I don't think I need to actually name off different colors. You can see them right here. I just lost my train of thought, Derek. You have to
That's
say
okay. So while we were showing off the cable extensions, I installed the rear fan with these leads and everything's starting to get a little bit more tight. I am running into things just getting sandwiched underneath things, which is fairly common. So
the one drawback as Derek embarks or continues to travel along his journey, struggle with cable management, is cable extensions require you to basically, extend your cables. The good thing about this is that you can use them with any manufacturer power supply cables because you're not plugging them straight into the power supply. You're only plugging in the power supply cables or you're extending the power supply cables. So basically, all your power supply cables are going to be, you're going to have to kind of stuff them into an area that wasn't necessarily designed to take that volume of cabling because you have the extensions and then you're going to have the original length of the original OEM cables that you're still going to have to hide in the back cavity or maybe underneath the PSU shroud. And there's a limited amount of space. So for example, I recently built up a mini ITX system and I was a dork and I tried to make it as cool looking as possible for my kids. But it was super, super tight just to get the normal cables in, and I absolutely did not want to mess with cable extensions, even though they would have looked cooler. So here you see kind of the rat's nest of
that has started.
that has started, and that gradually as we go, Derek is going to quickly tidy up and organize. If you see here on this Fractal Meshify 2, this is one of those, as one of the nicer cases, you've got, not just these rubberized grommet holes to pass through cables, but you also have very clearly defined cable management channels with built-in Velcro so that you can group cables together. Sometimes as you build a system, you basically temporarily place cables or temporarily group cables together while you figure out the best routing. And when you do that, having Velcro helps because the alternative is going to be using 6 million different zip ties, zipping them, clipping them, replacing them. But with Velcro, you can kind of redo things and do things temporarily without a lot of muss and fuss. So right here, as you see, the grommet hole has disgorged the 24-pin power cable that Derek has shoved through from the other side. And let's see, there is, that's right. We already placed a Corsair RGB hub here at the back.
That comes with the 3 packs?
That comes with one of the 3 packs of RGB fans. Basically, all RGB 3 packs and 2 packs of 140 millimeter fans are generally going to come with some kind of RGB hub. When it's with the case of Corsairs, then it's with the RGB hub as well as the lighting node core, right? And Derek's decided to place this particular RGB hub right here on top of what are one of 2 2.5-inch drive caddies that the Fractal Meshify 2 has on the backside. It still has another 2.5 right here on the left side of the back. So you could, on this Fractal Meshify, carry up to 3 different 2.5s that are hidden back in the cable channel. And then I think there's still also space for 3.5-inch drives underneath the PSU, or next to the PSU under the shroud. Derek, what are you going to do next?
So now we're going to pass through all of the full case connections. So we have our front panel switches, like our power, our reset, hard drive LED, things like that. We have our Type-C cable, our USB 3.0, so for all our USBs in the front, so that those all function, as well as our HD audio, if you just needed a quick connection for some headphones or for a microphone. This is a huge mess and always will before you start. I like to go with the easier ones first, just so that they're done and out of the way. So right now I'm going to take all of the RGB leads and take them and push them out of the way, so it's a little bit easier to understand what we're looking at. So,
oh, okay. So our friend with the spectacular name who won the Western Digital Blue 1 terabyte SN550 needs to respond to our team through chat. Otherwise, we're going to pick another winner.
So we have our Type-C underneath there. If I remember correctly, our USB 3.0 is just right on the other side of this, which is why I still had it routed in there, just so that it was easy. I have our HD audio. All of these connections are coming up from the top here in this bundle that started here. I have them already kind of zip tied out of the way, just to make it a little bit easier.
Just for folks who are really new at this, the USB 3.0 header cable that Derek just routed through this grommet hole, I'm going to show you on the other side the reason why he went through that grommet hole is super obvious and logical, but maybe not quite at first, in the sense that it's going to connect up to a header port that is, oh, I'm going to embarrass myself because
it's going to be flat on the, right where the,
well,
so this one actually has 2.
Oh, right here, okay.
Yeah, so this board, because of the high-end nature of it, it does have the ability to have 2
3.0 headers, which normally you have 1. But obviously, so basically you choose the grommet hole and the location where you're going to get the best direct access to the port that you're going to go to kind of minimize cable length, which will look cleaner and nicer. And as you can see, Derek started to shove through some of the case cable leads or connectors for some of the case buttons like power and reset.
And I think they fell.
Well, yeah.
We got 1.
This is turning into like a Jacques Cousteau documentary, Into the Deep.
Perfect. So at this point, I can go ahead and flip it around and plug all those in. I've run them through the majority of the grommets.
Right.
From the back side, just like before, making sure that everything is nice and loose, so when you're tugging on your cables, you're not pulling on anything and damaging anything.
Oh, to zoom out to like the simplest level of things, what Derek's doing right now is basically nice, conscientious, clean, attractive cable management, which is not just about aesthetics, but also being able to figure out what is connected to what and where later on in case you need to troubleshoot stuff. But, you know, I'm not the only one who has built up a system at one point, and I did not care what it looked like, and I was lazy, and basically this whole back half of the case, or in older cases, just all over the place, was just a disorganized mess in terms of how it looked, but everything was connected in the right way. So to be really clear, yeah, there's functionality here in terms of being able to troubleshoot and to reconnect things or to detach things if necessary. But for the most part, this is not about anything. This is not something that needs to be done. You don't have to go through all this effort. You potentially could just simply route things through, connect it to the right spots, and have it look super ugly and super messy, and that's okay.
And it just works.
And it just works.
So I finished doing the HD audio, doing the front panel, did the USB 3.0, that kind of just tucks in there. The Type-C is right here. Once again, we're running into the large AIO and being able to plug in its connections. Taking out some memory sticks are a lot easier than fiddling with it for hours and potentially damaging anything. So having all of this, it's much easier and probably really hard for you to see at this point.
I'm gonna try to go on the other side here.
Okay.
It's a good thing you're not balding, Derek.
Thanks. Appreciate that. So we've got the USB 2.0 connection so that the pump can interface with its software in Windows. This is always...
So I was just notified that we're going to be doing the Western Digital SN850 giveaway. So again, that's a Western Digital Black SN850, 1 terabyte PCIe 4.0 NVMe M.2 drive. So, you know, basically about essentially the best of the best right now on the market for fast SSDs. So just make sure that you enter the raffle if you've joined late. If you joined late and you didn't hear the instructions on how to enter, go to our Facebook page, which is www. Well, I don't have to say www. Facebook.com/centralcomputer. The top pin post should be something that is promoting this live stream, and the one that you want to look for has a big live now. What does it say? Live now in the middle of the graphic, and that post, just comment with the name of your favorite game, tag a friend, and you will be included in the drawing. So Derek's going to replace back the RGB memory that he needed to take out in order to connect the AIO hoses, just like he had to do the first time we did a walkthrough of this.
I didn't learn my lesson.
It's okay, I didn't take notes.
I took notes, but clearly didn't reread them. That's okay. So anytime you've ever put in a memory module in, if you notice it's not going in properly, it's probably because you started one side too far. So all of our case connections for our front panel are all now connected. We have our HD audio down here. On my front panel connectors down here. Those are positive and negative. Make sure you get those in the proper orientation. Our USB 3.0 and our Type-C right here, all kind of tucked in there. You saw me feed through our PCI extensions and our 24 pins. So now those are all ready for us to do the power supply. One really cool thing for this case, it does have a bracket that does come off, so you can go ahead and attach your power supply properly, and then just kind of slide it in without having to fuss with it too much. Also makes it a lot easier to tuck your cables in when you're done, because you can just space it out a little bit and do any adjustments you may need.
Go ahead and grab that. And then the other thing that this case has that isn't that rare, but is not necessarily super common, is that you've got vertical I/O ports, which will allow you to run your graphics card vertically and plugged into your motherboard through a riser cable extension. so you can see the entire side of the graphics card rather than plug it into the motherboard and just see the top edge. Again, another one of the many, many things that you do because it looks super cool.
Because your friends are going to come over and look at it and go, wow, I need to go spend more money at Central Computers.
So this is the bracket that that Derek was talking about as far as being a mounting faceplate bracket for the power supply, and basically you can just attach it easily here and then slide it in rather than try to angle your hand on the inside of the case while you sort of support the power supply enough to line up the 4 screw holes that you need to get it mounted. Now you get this, and then you end up just doing 2 thumb screws,
which are much easier.
So he still has to do the 4 mounting screws. It's just that it's to this detachable plate, and then it's the slide in. Let's see. I guess another thing to maybe discuss again, because we're using an Intel 11900K, and I can see all the Team Red fanboys in chat. Actually, I don't know. Are people getting upset about the fact that we're not using a Ryzen? No, everyone's nice and polite. That's cool. Look, in the market, you've got, obviously with CPUs, you've got 2 dominant players, and we're featuring an Intel right now because it's gamer days. But there's a lot to be said for both platforms. And a lot of focus has been on some of the advancements that have been made with the Ryzen 5000 series, the Zen 3 CPUs, and Intel's counterpunch is the 11th gen Rocket Lake series, of which we're using the 11900K. And, you know, I would say that you take on an entire view of what you're going to be doing with your system and what you value, and not just look at benchmarks. First of all, I think depending on which game you're going to play, an 11900K is going to compare very favorably against even a 5900X. Depends on what game you're playing, depends on what resolution you're running. But one thing that is still a huge selling point with Intel processors is the fact that the Intel platform between the processors and the motherboard is still kind of I don't want to say default, but it's still the one that is going to be the most stable. Intel, generally speaking, is going to be more thorough about testing and qualification of things. There's probably going to be more testing and qualification by third-party manufacturers to make sure that everything is compatible with the Intel platform, because it still outsells AMD's in general in terms of overall volume. And this has ramifications as far as compatibility, and therefore like the perceived reliability and basically how much of a pain in the ass sometimes you're going to encounter while you try to do basic things. Like I recently was talking to a customer who came in and he needed to exchange an AMD 5900X and an Asus Dark Hero motherboard. And this is a combo that, you know, maybe 3 months ago, people were lining up for hours to try to find and scalping for hundreds above their value. I mean, I saw Dark Hero motherboards being sold for $900, $1,000, right?
Over double.
Yeah, over double the normal price on them. And but the reason why he was bringing them back is because he had a super high-end sim racing rig. And when I say super high-end, I mean like really high-end VR goggle based, but with a full motion platform. So motorized simulation platform. And all of this stuff runs off of USB connections. And it essentially just would not work with his AMD gear. Who knows? It's tough to troubleshoot this type of stuff. But if you look on forums, you can see that issues that people have with USB equipment with AMD platform systems, it's not rare. And I myself have an external hard drive that likes to re-recognize itself as being newly plugged in every X number of minutes on occasion with my AMD-based system. So, you know, just like with overclocking and being able to tolerate and deal with a lot of inconsistency or having to troubleshoot a lot in order to eke out that last little bit of speed, there's a lot to be said with going with a tried and true reliable platform that has been tested exhaustively and doesn't build in features that have not been not deemed, but verified as being essentially as bulletproof as can be. So again, the fact that you've got USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2 as native support and not through some third-party chipset is a relatively significant thing if USB connectivity is a key thing for you. That's looking really beautiful, Derek.
Thanks. So right now, if you've been watching and listening to Chester, essentially what I've been doing is I've been kind of tying down the things that I know need to be kind of out of the way, plugging in our extensions so we don't forget any of those connections, kind of placing them in a spot so that, I'm keeping track of them without it involving other spots. So I've got the 24 pin and the PCI plugged in. Next we have the CPU, and then we've got our SATA cable power to our RGB hub, our integrated fan hub, as well as our pump, because AIOs do require some additional power to move that liquid.
I'm gonna interrupt you quickly because I'm overdue to announce our winner of the Western Digital SN850 1 terabyte, the Western Digital Black SN850 1 terabyte.
It's a mouthful.
PCIe 4.0 NVMe M.2 solid state drive, and our winner is Sahil Verma.
Woo!
Congratulations, Sahil. I hope you're replacing some shabby PCIe 3.0 SSD with this scorching drive.
Scorching fast. So like I said, we're just kind of finishing up those connections so that we can cable manage them. A lot of these connections, you're gonna have to unplug a few times. As you can see, like I had some cables I had routed before that I want underneath these, so I had to unplug these and kind of redo a few steps. That's what it takes sometimes to be able to make sure that you have everything kind of laid out the way you want, and so that the case panel will close. So just kind of finishing that up using the integrated Velcro ties and everything is very helpful. I don't have to pull out those zip ties like earlier. So kind of having these all tucked away. And like Chester was saying earlier, if we ever do have an issue down the line, having everything kind of bundled in its proper place makes it a lot easier to troubleshoot. Couldn't tell you how many times a customer has brought in a PC that I had to almost cable manage to be able to figure out what was going on with it. So
beginning. So one of the things that we're doing that I think, aside from the giveaways that we have,
how did we forget?
I know, right? So aside from the giveaways that we have, which are cool themselves, is that very system that Derek is building right now, which again is loaded, 11900K, an EVK 3080 Ti for the Wing 3 Ultra nonetheless, yada, yada, yada. Basically a $4,000 plus system. The subtotal on this comes out to another promo. If in fact this system is going to be on sale for $500 off for any one of the only one of you who wants to buy this, then it's super easy. You get to buy this. More than one of you want to buy it. You couldn't hear me the whole time? You couldn't hear me the whole time? So I have to explain the whole thing again?
You couldn't hear it on my mic?
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that's cool. So I'm an idiot for not turning my mic on when I need to talk. It's my own fault. So one of the cool things that we're doing, aside from all the giveaways that we have here, is this system that Derek is building um, is normally totals up to $4,018.24. But for
One lucky viewer.
for one lucky viewer, if there is one lucky viewer who is interested in a high-end, top-end build like this, this system is going to be sold for $500 off. So a $500 discount on a $4,000 system instead of $4,018.24. You know what? We're not even going to charge $35,18.24. It'll just be $3,500. So it's a huge discount that basically is never going to be repeated in another way. Oh, okay. So what my team's telling me is that they're putting up a new post on our Facebook page. And if you happen to want to purchase this system for this discount, then go ahead and like that post and our marketing team will reach out to you. If there's more than one, sorry, we can't sell the system for the discount more than one. So we're going to draw a winner who gets to get the discount. Yeah.
But I'd be more than happy to make you one.
Yeah, so we can always build another one. But the thing is that when we knock $500 off the price, essentially we're building it and selling it either break even or maybe, I think, maybe a loss or just right around there. One thing about this industry, as cool as it is, if you do enjoy computing and gaming, it's super interesting, but it's also a brutal business with really thin profit margins. So.
So,
Do you guys have any other questions from the audience? It doesn't look that pretty right now, but it's looking a lot better.
Well, I just pulled down all the RGB. Look
Oh,
how
now it is. Now it looks pretty. And as soon as you pin up the RGB stuff correctly, it's going to look beautiful.
it's gonna look amazing. So yeah, right now I'm zip tying the PCIe cables together just because they are a little cumbersome with the extensions. So tighten these up a little bit, cutting that off with a good pair of side cutters makes so you don't kind of cut yourself when you're fiddling in there after. With the large PSU shroud here, I'm going to be able to tuck this all the way in here. In the interest of time, I'm just going to make sure that it's in there. As you can see, I pulled down all the leads from the fans. That is all we have left to wire up.
Nice.
And then we're ready to show you the cool profiles I made to show off the system.
Nice. Wait, did we install the GPU yet?
No, that's the crown jewel.
All right.
Yeah, that's the easy one. But right now we have the 4 fans, the 3 from the AIO, and then the 1 from the rear to go. The one thing with Corsair, because they have some really, really cool ways to synchronize all of your RGB, putting them in the proper order is actually really important, because if you had a sequence where you went from one side of the case to the other, if you plugged in the third fan as the second and the second as the third, it'll jump back and forth and not look as good. So
you'll see when Derek shows off some of the lighting profiles, but basically you'll have some effects where it's sort of like, I don't know, like a colored dot goes from fan to fan to fan. And obviously to get the full effect of that, you need to do it in order. And if you don't plug them in a logical order, it's always going to be super confusing for you to set up these light schemes. You do it the right cabling job one time and everything becomes easier. Okay, so as a reminder, we're soon going to be doing giveaways of the 2, we're going to do 2 NZXT AIOs, and you get to have your choice of either size that is available, either the Z63 or the Z73, and Andy's going to place it up on the table for me really nicely. So this is a NZXT Kraken Z63, the box, and this is the Z73. So again, Z63 denotes that it is a 120 millimeter, or sorry, excuse me, 240 millimeter, 2 times 120 millimeter. Oh no, this is a 280 millimeter. I'm sorry.
You got it right the first time.
Jeez. Oh, that's right. Okay, the Z53 is the 240 millimeter model. Okay, so we have
The 6 and then the 7 are the subsequent.
yeah, we have the
models.
240 millimeter size and we have the 360 millimeter size. We're going to do 2 drawings for these, and you can pick either one. We have a couple of additional in stock that we're going to use for this that were actually very kindly sent to us by NZXT for this purpose. So thank us, not only us, but also NZXT for taking care of the giveaway swag. And you get to choose either or. So it's not as if the first winner gets the choice and then the second winner has to take what is left over. So the cool thing about the NZXT Kraken Z series, if you haven't noticed, is this whole little LCD screen. Or this is actually
It's OLED.
It's OLED, yeah. So it's pretty bright and vibrant. And right now on the box, it's showing like the NZXT logo plus a temperature readout of the CPU. That's a temperature metric, and it has other profiles that will show ambient like case temperature and maybe something else. But the really unique thing about the Kraken Z series is that it not only can do different performance metrics or thermal metrics, but it actually can be programmed to display any old static image that you want, and then also any GIF, any animated GIF that you possibly could want to throw on there. You might have to crop it down to a particular size or whatever, but then you can have a moving image that is customizable in the middle of your super custom system. So for a lot of people, it kind of like finishes off a theme and just adds a really nice bit of flair to their overall system. So let's see, we can give you back. Thank you, Andy.
So,
You go ahead.
So while Chester was talking about the really cool NZXT cooler that we have installed here, but also one of you is going, or 2 of you are going to win, I've connected all of my RGB leads to the hub so that we're going to be able to control them. And then I've also connected the remaining fans to the corresponding fan hub, as well as the AIO control. So NZXT's program called CAM will allow you to change your fan profiles in Windows based on whatever you're wanting to do with the PC. If you're want it in quiet mode when you're just browsing the internet and checking emails, you can set it to silent. When you're gaming and you don't care about noise because you got a big old a set of cans on your head, turning it to performance, making sure it's nice and cool and everything's nice and steady. You'll be able to control that directly from Windows without having to do your BIOS. At this point, I have everything all wired up for this, and then I definitely can tuck these away a little bit more, but I think we're ready for the next step.
First winner. All right. So while Derek keeps it going, we've got our first NZXT winner. And do you know which one he chose? Oh, okay. So the winner is Eli Suarso. So our team's going to contact you right now to see whether you would like the Z63 or the Z73. And they're going to be doing a second drawing pretty soon.
So our last thing to really plug in before the system is fully operational is going to be our GPU. It normally is wrapped in a whole bunch of like plastic wrap to keep it all safe. Obviously, I've taken it off because I have heat cycled it and make sure that the GPU is fully functional. But I did miss the fan stickers, and everyone always does. So I'm going to take care of that. I already have the PCI cover plates out of the back, so we're ready to go there. And we have our power cables already ran through. There we are. Probably just take the screws out so that we can attach it. At this point, this is the last thing that we have to take care of before we can do a Windows install. At this point, it's just the finishing touches. Right, so those are set. One big thing that a lot of people don't really realize about these new 8 series cards from NVIDIA is that the 3080 and 3080 Ti's do require 3 8-pin PCI power, so making sure that you have a proper power supply to power this beast is recommended. Otherwise, you're just not going to get all the performance you paid for, and who likes paying for stuff you can't take advantage of? For the Win cards, they do have a dual BIOS switch or a fan curve. I forget what exactly it is for the normal and the OC, which is really cool. The last thing we got to do is plug in these cables that I've braided all together, so it's nice and all together, but does make it a little bit harder to push and install. Decided to cooperate. So as you can see, these cable combs and everything are going to keep everything all nice and tidy. When you do the full kit, I actually used the leftovers from the 24 pin down here to get it started, and used the individual 8 pins underneath just to kind of continue it. So there it is.
Yeah, and I guess here, not the elephant in the room, but the big topic for the past almost year, ever since like last, November or so, has been the unavailability of GPUs, how scarce they are, how expensive they are, how difficult they are to get. And right now, the situation has been better recently over the past couple of months or so, rather than the middle few months of the year. Although supply is starting to dwindle down again, our stock is starting to dwindle down. Just so people who are not familiar with us and how we've been selling these all this time understand it. Supply is tight. We have to pay really high prices for these. So I see pretty often, I see comments on Reddit or on Twitter, and I try my best to always respond to them as best as I can, to talk about the reasoning for the pricing, because I see a lot of people basically saying that, like, oh, this is marked up from MSRP. And the thing for people to understand is that MSRP essentially doesn't mean anything. And we don't determine our pricing relative to MSRP. It's relative to the cost that we have to pay to our suppliers. So unlike some of, like, a really, really big, huge retailer like, or an online retailer like Amazon or Best Buy or Micro Center, we don't buy directly from the manufacturers. So number one, we can't get founders editions from NVIDIA. All the third-party AIB manufacturers, we don't buy directly from them. So we don't buy from Asus, we don't buy from EVGA or MSI or Zotac. We buy from distributors, and the distributors are in between. They set pricing, they set other conditions, like we've had to buy a lot of bundles with cards for quite a while. We're having to buy like very significant bundles of stuff that we frankly, did not want to buy, and it was very difficult to sell. It was also overpriced. And all of this adds cost. So generally speaking, the cost that we've been paying on graphics cards, our cost, is around MSRP. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's a little bit lower. But typically speaking, when you consider the basic cost of credit card fees, generally our cost is MSRP or higher. So we just literally cannot sell at MSRP unless we're willing to lose money on every sale. And what we generally have done, as we always do with pretty much everything that we do, is try to set a fair price. And the fair price is decided relative to our costs. So for GPUs, during this entire time, depending on which model it is or which brand, our profit margin probably ranges somewhere between 5 or 6% on the very low end with really expensive cards, up to around 15%, sometimes a little bit more. But that kind of range, like 6, 7, 8% up to about 15%. So to us, that's a fair margin to be able to keep our doors open and to provide the services that we try our best to provide. We're not scalping, we're not gouging. MSRP just has no bearing on what we're able to do or not do. And our concentration has been this entire time to basically pay whatever price is necessary in order to get supply for our customers to buy. Because to us, our role is to basically procure inventory for our customers to buy. We put the price up and we price it as fairly as we can. And customers get the choice of either buying or not buying it. Either the price works for them or they don't. But the reality is that if we don't buy it for a high price, we won't get any supply at all. So it doesn't do our customers any favor to refuse to sell for anything but MSRP or lower and then have no inventory to sell for MSRP or lower. So hopefully that helps people understand what the situation is. And the second winner of our NZXT AIOs, let's see, you're on the overhead camera or the straight ahead? Oh, can you give me an NZXT box? Sorry, this is a little disorganized. Just give me one. Our winner of the second NZXT AIO, and it doesn't have to be the Z73, just like we said, it can be the Z63, is Jomar Villarosa. So Jomar, our team is going to be asking pretty soon which one you would prefer. Okay. Derek, where are you at with the build?
We are ready to show off the glorious RGB.
All right.
Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome.
You got...
Oh, that feels nice. It's very hot under the light.
Yeah, Derek's not nervous. He's sweating because it's hot in this room.
I do this all day. This is nothing new.
Well, the lights are all on in here, and then I forgot that the timing on the HVAC system turned off AC in here probably like an hour ago. So that's my fault. But I just want to stress that Derek is not nervous at all. This is his bread and butter.
Now, I'm pretty much blind standing where I am, so I'm really hoping that it's just rolling through everything and I just...
So far, no image on the monitor, but the RGB is basically kicked to, some of the stuff is kicked to what the default was the last time that maybe it was set. I'm going to say that you've got the blue and white scheme on the Corsair fans, you got rainbow on the EVGA graphics card. Now you can see the whole case, so I don't have to tell you what's going on.
Okay. So normally...
Oh, you know what? This is a good time because I did this the other day. I just want to set a reminder for people that something that we see all the time. Andy, can you switch us to the hand cam? Okay. So I just want to show one thing is that Derek correctly has, oh shoot. Derek correctly has the HDMI cable going to the monitor connected to the GPU. This motherboard and the CPU does support an on-die GPU, which is to say built into the CPU. And there's a lot of times that we get customers who go home and they set up their brand new, super awesome gaming system, and they come back to us and they tell us or they ask us, why is it that my super awesome gaming system has such terrible frame rates for the games that I'm playing? And then we take a look at their setup, and it turns out that they plugged in their monitor to the CPU, GPU, which is a totally serviceable one, but not something that you're going to be using for gaming. So always remember that. And that's also another point that makes the Intels kind of attractive, because you do have the option of getting an Intel CPU up and down the line that does have an on-die GPU. Whereas with the AMDs, except for I think some of the lower end legacy models, none of them have any kind of on-die GPU, and you can only use a discrete GPU. You can only use a separate card. And if you're gaming or you're doing anything that's graphics intensive, then you don't really want to use the on-die GPU anyway. But at the same time, you're only paying usually $20 to $30 premium above an Intel model that doesn't have it built in. And for $20, $30, it's a really nice thing to have either an additional video output, or at least a built-in backup that you can use in case like your GPU fails or you need to troubleshoot like Derek is now doing to try to figure out what's going on here. We already built the system one time to make sure that there was not a conundrum here.
Solid white light. We're good.
Okay, here we go.
Supposedly. Is it cycling through?
Yeah, and then
Turned off. Okay, maybe not.
oh,
These are the fun things of live.
this was the plan, though. Actually, was to have a an unknown issue, and
Oh, so you sabotaged me.
and then for Derek to troubleshoot it live, and also to see if anybody noticed what he did wrong.
Oh yeah, these are physical buttons. That's the one I want.
I'm going to go to the nice, relaxing sights of the uncoordinated RGB setup that we have going on. Just so, in case anybody's wondering, what we want to do is get into Windows and demo what the NZXT Kraken Z is capable of doing, and also what kind of sort of intricate schemes you can set up between all the different fans and other RGB, or the memory DIMMs, and coordinate the whole scheme together. We're also queuing up the drawing for what is the grand prize, which is an EVGA RTX 3060 graphics card. So again, if you tuned in late, or if you decide to skip most of all this stuff and just to come in at the end for the grand prize, then in order to enter the drawing, all you have to do is go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/centralcomputer. Go to the pinned top comment or pinned top post, which will be a promo for this live stream, and it will have live now in big red text in the middle of the graphic. And that is the post that you need to go in and post a comment with the name of your favorite game and tag a friend. And once you do that, then you will be in the pool with our team to scrub or to grab all the names and put it into the drawing for that RTX 3060. Whew. Derek, this is tense.
I know. So in lieu of time, so what I've done is I've reset the CMOS to, you know, just in case I did anything interesting when I was disabling or taking apart the system. I've plugged into the integrated GPU on the motherboard so that we can show you the RGB. It's really not gonna change anything because we're not gaming at the moment. And we'll go ahead and take a little more deep dive into it and just look at it later when You guys aren't
Get that
anxiously
going.
waiting who's
One
going to win the
thing is,
3060.
actually, Andy, if can you swap over to that NZXT H1 graphic? 'Cause I did want to mention this because I was just talking to our NZXT rep today about this. And oh, see, now I'm looking at chat and everyone's got a whole bunch of helpful hints, Derek.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, but I'm not going to read that out.
Oh, you're not
I
gonna
wanted
help
to
me
talk
out
about
here?
this. Just really quickly, the H1 is coming back. I think
Which I want to build it.
yeah, we have pending orders, or maybe they're already in stock again. Um, and it's NZXT's mini ITX case. So it's super compact. It's only about like it's just under 7.5 inch by 7.5 inch square at the base. And then I believe it's just a little bit over 15 inches tall. So it's a really, really compact mini ITX tower that's kind of like narrow and not that tall either.
It's a very, very good looking Xbox.
Yeah, it is. It's basically a really good looking,
Series
almost
X.
like Series X. And one of the unique things about this, other than the fact that it's really compact and really nice and clean looking like the rest of NZXT's cases, is that it also comes with an AIO. It comes with a 120 millimeter AIO as part of the case, and also it comes with a 650 watt 80 plus gold power supply as part of the entire price. And there is a special promotion that is coming out right now, where between September 3rd and September 10th, the H1 is for sale for $299.99 rather than basically $350. So for $300, you get a really nice premium mini ITX chassis along with an AIO and also a power supply, a 650 watt power supply. Now, 650 watts not going to be big enough to run something like the 3080 Ti that Derek just installed in the other system, but you don't want to run a 3080 Ti probably in the NZXT H1 because of cooling reasons. There are limitations to that kind of form factor, but maybe I'm wrong too. So I don't want the NZXT rep to yell at me about this. So I should double check. And obviously I haven't checked comments or the chat, but everybody knows, or a lot of people know, that that NZXT needed to go back and do a retrofit on the cases. So they've done 2 different retrofits on the case to prevent a like static electricity buildup issue that could potentially spark. Although it seemed as if like the only way to create this was to artificially manufacture it. But in any case, whether natural or manufactured, the case elements have been redesigned a couple of times. They have been retrofitted completely, and you go back to essentially being this being one of the most attractive ITX cases that you can build in. And also, for a while it's only priced at $300 or $299.99 with the AIO built in and the power supply included. It's actually a good bargain because those 2 elements already, like a power supply, SFXL power supply, 650 watt is generally going to cost well over $100 anyway. And the AIO, let's just say, is going to cost like $90 to $120 anyway. So you're basically spending maybe 50 to 75 bucks or so for a really unique case. So in any case, just wanted to mention that those are either already back in our stores or imminently going to be available, and they're going to be available for a sale price of $299.99. So Andy, I think you can go back and basically Derek's ready to show off the RGB and to also explain some of the different sort of schemes that you can go through and set up with both the fans and the RAM, and as well as the NZXT Kraken Z AIO OLED screen.
Yeah.
That's a lot of jumble of words to say.
So, like we alluded to earlier, when you're picking your RGB or just picking your components in general, making sure that they're all compatible and making sure you're using the least amount of software possible to control all of these lights, the easier it is to make it all cohesive. with the Corsair fans, the RAM, um, as well as enabling plugins on the IQ software. You are able to even control the Asus motherboard. So the majority of the lights are all going to be on one thing. Obviously, we have our graphics card, our 3080 Ti. We're going to have to control in precision, which I have in the bottom corner. And then our NZXT cam will be able to control our OLED screen. So right now I have it set to rainbow, which is what it'll normally come as. I have set up a couple of profiles to kind of show off some things. We're going to turn the lights a little bit lower, just make it a little bit easier to see. But here we go. So one really cool thing about IQ is if you just want rainbow, it has a one-click way. So I've been hiding my central computers profile underneath the rainbow. So as soon as I unclick this, it'll all go to that, which is a really cool green and white theme. Everything's all tied together. For this one in particular, some of the things that I did go ahead and do for the lighting is layer a base green with the rotating white so that the case is always illuminated, but you still have some movement. Same with our memory modules, but I went the opposite way. I did a white base with a moving green. Going along to our graphics card, one of the things that I really like is the color stack. And I have it going towards the rear of the case, if I remember right. Can't really see it from where I'm standing, but all of that. You can change multiple zones. On the graphics card, it does have a 5-volt header on there, so if you wanted to connect into your RGB and control it with EVGA software, you can. And then our last piece is going to be our NZXT cam under lighting for the LCD display. Right now I have it set up for CPU and GPU temperatures, but we are going to switch that.
Actually, maybe I'll switch to the hand cam for this.
So we can get a little bit closer in.
Yeah. Okay. So
switching over to that. For this one, I'm a big Pokemon fan, so you know the crying Meowth, just showing off how dynamic the screen is with the animated GIF, does allow for infinite possibilities. My friend built in one of these recently with the OLED screen, and he did a Travis Scott one and did a GIF of Travis Scott at one of his concerts, which was a pretty cool touch. Switching to some other profiles just to show off some other things. Obviously today we are showcasing Intel Gamer Days. So we've got the blue and white. It's a fairly similar scheme with just a little bit different. Go ahead and switching up the graphics card. And I did find one of their ads that was really dynamic in the past, and I was able to make that into a GIF to add into the screen, allowing it for it to really show off what we're doing today.
So with all due respect to Derek, who is creative, but not that creative.
I didn't make it.
Why? No, I'm just saying, look, all I'm saying is that I've seen some people build or show off some builds with all of this that are like ultra intricate and tied in, not in terms of the color scheme, but tying in like the GIF or some sort of static graphic, figurines and stuff like that. We've all seen this stuff on Battle Station, or what is it called?
Battle Stations.
Yeah, Battle Stations, our Battle Stations on Reddit or PC Master Race, showing off like ultra dialed in builds. And so it's just that if you get one of these Kraken Zs, yeah, it's expensive. Like I think they start at what, $250 or so in store.
But they're on sale for like $230 for the small
nice.
And then this cooler, I believe, is just I think $279 if I remember correctly.
So still really expensive, just less really expensive. You know, but so are fans. So is everything else that you're doing within the hardware. And you know, if you really want to dial things in to the utmost and add this extra detail of a programmable screen that you can basically put whatever you want on there, it's just a nice extra touch. In terms of a couple of other things, just to note as far as getting your build tied in just right, is that again, these are QL fans from Corsair, so they're double-sided. and they are thus visible from the inside of the case and lighting up the interior of the case, as well as on a mesh front case viewable through the mesh. Whereas if you had LLs, the single-sided ones, you wouldn't have the lit ring. You could see the fan blades from both sides, but not the ring. So you wouldn't get the full effect. And the cool thing about the QLs too is that the two sides and the inner and the outer rings are all independently programmable. So you can get some really intricate effects going on there. Okay, so I think we have grand prize. Is that right? Okay, so grand prize winner of our 3060, our EVGA 3060 XE 12 gigabyte graphics card. Don't have to line up for hours and hours at Best Buy or another fine retailer, is Joseph Anelli, Anneli. Now, guys, I want you to look at the numbers of people watching the stream and see how quickly it plunged, and let me know. All right. Wow. A bunch of you guys made it right to the end. And hey, thank you, Derek, for building this up, and also all the work that went into planning this out, getting the first demo run through, putting a lot of thought into the build, getting lighting schemes all pre-set up, and getting the perfect, I don't know what this is, an enraged cartoon.
That was me about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. You know, which ties together the build perfectly, just like Lebowski's rug. Oh yeah, Derek doesn't understand that movie reference.
I've seen it, but it's been a while. But it's okay.
Andy, do we have any sort of final interesting questions that maybe would be cool for the audience? Anything big? I apologize again that I can't see everything, and I can't answer necessarily in real time. Andy, can you switch to the stable cam? All right. Oops, sorry. So
this is Joseph.
Maybe you can pop these lights. Okay. So I just wanted to. I'm gonna.
You can have the glory side.
I wanted to thank everyone for watching the stream. Again, we planned this out starting maybe a few weeks ago, and we tried to figure out how to do this. It took a while to get the basic software and hardware, everything set up, and then also, as you can see, the getting all the cameras and everything and the audio correct is a work in progress. As is the prize drawings. We have a whole team that's working on this simultaneously. It's not just Derek, who was on camera for the most of the time. I don't think has even gotten a sip of water so far. While I'm talking,
I've snuck a few in.
Very nice. Okay. We also have Andy and Elisa from our marketing team who are here in the room with us, who have been running the stream template, switching between camera views, and running the raffles, along with Ethan, who was also in marketing but is working remote right now because I think yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, Ethan. Thanks for your help. So, Andy, anything to answer or recap? NFTs?
Ooh, I've never gotten that question before. I'm not sure. That'd be pretty interesting because that's something that you own and no one else.
I mean,
can
I guess the
display,
thing is that if you have an NFT, you sort of have a certification that you have the original file somehow. And basically the way that the Kraken Z's function is that you load up like a GIF file or a JPEG. So whatever sort of computer file you have that is compatible in terms of format, then you can load that up. So if it happens to be a certified NFT, then I suppose that works, and it doesn't, that I don't think that necessarily has much bearing on it. Elisa? Yeah, actually, I'm glad that somebody asked. Yeah, Derek, you're not a technician anymore. You're now.
I'm now a full-time streamer?
Yeah, you're now a full-time YouTube personality. No, I think that this has been fun to set up. It's really cool to be able to show off certain things that we have in the store. It's really cool to show off the skills that that Derek and our other technicians have in terms of doing relatively intricate or quite intricate builds and dialing them in. This is really what we do on a day-to-day basis. You come into our store and we've got basically all the hardware that you could ever want or that you need to build up a dream system. Whether it's Intel or AMD, right now we're featuring Intel because it's a kick-ass platform. But also we actually have graphics cards in stock. If you go to our website, there's a tile on there that says that's green RTX 30 series information page or something like that. And it has all the terms and conditions for how we're selling them at the moment. I apologize for how complex it gets and also that it changes from time to time. But basically, the whole situation is dynamic all the time. And we're always having to adjust. So for example, there was a certain period where we had so many 3070 Ti's that we had given local customers the chance to purchase them standalone in our stores, in person only, for 2, maybe 3 weeks. And we still had a bunch of them left, didn't want to be sitting on a whole ton of them. And we gave our local customers the priority, which we always do with things that are in high demand, such as graphics cards. And then finally opened it up for shipped orders to customers out of state, whom we value too, of course, but you know, the ones that we're loyal to the most are our local customers for good reason. And I think supply has dwindled so much that we've now revoked that, and now they're in store only, and they may even be with a bundle. So the situation is always dynamic, it's always changing. We don't like imposing any kind of requirements, but sometimes that's one way to slow down the sale rate and to rationalize who gets what. Also, frankly, if you go back earlier in the year, let's say middle of February up until June, maybe July, maybe June, supply on graphics cards was abysmal, and it affected our ability to do our core business, which is build and sell systems that are fully custom for gamers or for videographers or anyone that needs this kind of graphics horsepower. And we were getting to the point where instead of building our normal volume of systems, we were only building, like, let's say 10 of them a week or 15 systems a week, which for us is just not a sustainable rate. So we do have to reserve a certain amount of graphics cards for the systems that we build in order to be a viable business. We don't want to restrict things otherwise, but we just have to try to monitor the inventory amount and adjust accordingly. And then oftentimes in the past, like to buy an EVGA graphics card, we might have had to buy 3 EVGA power supplies, or like 2 keyboards and 1 mouse. Or I remember, I forget which one it was, we had to buy these kind of ugly off-brand cases and a whole bunch of them, and at a relatively high price. And the only way that we can move this inventory and not have like tons and tons of money wrapped up in inventory just sitting on the shelf is that we have to discount it. And discounting it oftentimes below cost, which means that we lose money on the bundled products that we had to buy in order to get GPU supply. That affects GPU prices and the fundamental cost to us. That was a really long response to a relatively simple question that had no bearing on any of this. We want to do more streams. We want to do other stuff. We want to do product reviews. We want to do unboxings because we happen to have like all the cool stuff in store. Sometimes we get it early. But certainly we have it when it's released to market. We'd like to do other builds. We'd like to do other builds that are unique. This one, as nice as it is, a Fractal Meshify 2 is not a particularly unique case. It's a very nice one. And the way that the interior setup is not as, I mean, there are other variations that I think would be interesting. So actually, if anyone has particular ideas as to the types of videos or the types of builds that you'd like to see Derek or maybe somebody else do, leave a reply. Oh, you know what? If my kids are watching, I've always wanted to pound that subscribe button. Actually, I don't think that we're subscribing to anything because it's not even our YouTube channel. But in any case, pound that subscribe button, hit like. Come on, fam. It's your boy Chester. We'd like to do other videos. Give us some suggestions. I think one of the things that we're thinking about upcoming maybe is an NZXT H1 build, just because I feel like that case over time has gotten a bum rap, and it's a spectacular one. It's not going to be all RGB like this, but what you will see with it is kind of the struggle and the process to be able to work through such a tight, confined working environment or a case for a system. And it's difficult. I just recently built my own like new system in a Thermaltake Tower 100, which is actually a fat, overladen, space-ridden ITX system. It's not at all small for an ITX, but it's still cramped in many different ways. And I think I told you, I was zip tying stuff for 2 hours to try to get the cable management.
I was there when you were doing it.
Yeah. So this kind of stuff I think is kind of interesting, and hopefully the fact that we went not too bad, just a little over 2 hours, right? We thought that we were going to run well over 2 hours because the first trial run went quite a while longer, and that's without building in the drawings and the raffles, but not too bad. You did
Great.
well. All right. So I think, yeah, we're going to do more videos, and I think like this one will end up on our YouTube channel so that it can always be watched after the fact. And we'll do that with future videos as well. We actually have to figure out how to, I guess, live broadcast on YouTube as well, right? And not just Facebook. But you know, it's a learning process for us, and I think that you guys did a really good job for the very first time. So thank you very much. You did a really good job.
Thank you, Chester.
I did a all right job. And thank you very much for tuning in. You know, the next time we put something up, if you can help out by letting friends or family that are enthusiasts know that the stream is coming up, that would help us. The more people that we can get to watch our videos means that we can probably engage more with our vendors and to get cool stuff, maybe even get cool stuff a little bit earlier, like some of the big YouTube personalities or big streamers, I guess is what you call them, whatever.
They do both now.
Yeah, but thank you very much for watching. It's kind of a new thing for us, and we look forward to doing more and having better content, and for me to stop rambling quite so much at the very end of videos and extending the time. Good night.
Thank you, guys.